Good afternoon, everyone. This is Joanne Chestnut coming to you from my home to yours. I hope you're enjoying your day today. I came on today to talk a little bit about rejection. So, as you guys who do know me, and if you don't know, I love Les Brown. I love Eric Thomas, or E.T. They call him the hip hop preacher, but I really love Iyanla Vanzant. I love the work she does with people, helping them to find their way through years and years of wounds, old wounds, and rejection. And when I pray, I often pray that God would go in the core of a wound and pluck out the core. So that we can begin to heal on the inside out. That's always a part of my prayer, because I know that, as a people, as a nation, we suffer from many wounds, and particularly as the Black people, we suffer deeply from many wounds. So someone sent this to me a while back. This is actually from 2015. Someone sent this to me, and I'm sorry, this is 2013. Someone sent this to me. Was a person who I went to church with, actually by Victoria Burst. She's one of the pastors at my former church, and she and I powwowed a lot and shared a lot of information between each other. And she had sent this to me once when I was dealing with some rejection. So I want to read it because I was looking up stuff. I always do a little bit of reading and research before I decide to come on, so that I'm making sure that I'm not just coming on. I don't want to call myself a coach or a restoration coach and I'm just talking to hear myself. I really want people to be getting healed. This is very healing for me, what I do. And I've been in positions to have other people speak into my life and help me grow and heal. So I want to make sure that when I'm speaking, I'm not just talking off the hip, off the cuff, that I'm doing my research and reading. So let me get into this. It says, again, this is by Pastor Victoria Burst. It says, I don't know of anyone who has not faced rejection at one time or another in their lives. It is, in fact, a part of living in this world and being in relationship with other human beings. However, there are those who have experienced rejection over and over again, or from key persons in their lives, such as parents, spouses, authority figures, etc. And the end result is they have been left wounded. I'd like to share a bit of the hidden wounds of rejection on today, define a few terms, and provide some revelation on healing as it relates to these wounds. So I'm not going to read the entire document, but I'm going to read what stood out for me. It says rejection, refusal, spurning, dismissal, elimination, to throw out as useless or worthless, to discard, something rejected as imperfect, unsatisfactory, or useless. That's the definition of rejection. And I had some of my definitions of my own, which were similar to this, so I just stuck to this. It says, here are some of the symptoms or the fruits of rejection. Now, it was really interesting to me, even back then, when she called this the fruit of rejection, because I thought, the fruit of the Spirit talks about the goodness, but anything that plants a seed will produce something. And as you know, the difference between a vegetable and a fruit is the fruit has its seeds within it. So anything that, tomatoes are really fruit because the seeds are inside of it. So all fruit have seeds that are within them. And so they produce some type of fruit, whether it's good fruit or bad fruit. So that, was something that I thought about when I seen this. So this is the fruit of rejection: anger, doubt, negative attitudes and spoken words, feeling of not being loved or accepted by others, hopelessness, isolation. Okay, here it says, those dealing with the wounds of rejection have a tendency to reject others so that they aren't the first one to be rejected. They often spend an inordinate amount of time wondering whether or not a person rejects or accepts them. They may also display an inability to be corrected or receive constructive criticism. Rejection often creates an environment where you are starved for love or just don't fit in. Rejection can destroy our self-esteem and attack who we are and our purpose in life. It is a destiny destroyer. So how do we confront this spirit of rejection in operation in our lives? Well, the root of rejection lies within misplaced identity. As children of the Most High God, we must never base our identity on what someone else thinks of us or anything else other than what God's word has to say about who we are. when we do this, we make ourselves vulnerable to the damage of rejection when we put our identity in other people and their thoughts and feelings about us. So I've experienced a lot of that. Even as a child, I had a different father from the rest of my siblings. I come from a family of 11 sisters and brothers, and out of 10 siblings, they all had the same mother and father, and I had a different father. Oftentimes that made me feel disconnected and rejected. When I would argue sometimes with some of my sisters, they would say, like, you're not my real sister, and those feelings of rejection stemmed from a child. And even not knowing my real dad and having a relationship for him for many years, it bothered me. But when I got older and became a mother myself, and my children's fathers loved their children so much and would do anything to get past me to get to them, I really couldn't understand then, why is my dad not fighting for a relationship with me the way my children's fathers would fight for a relationship with them? And they didn't really have to fight me, because I knew that I always loved my children more than I couldn't stand their parents, their fathers. So I would put my children first, even if I had disdain for their dads. I knew that them too, having parents who loved them and not making them feel like they had to choose, was going to be healthier for them. So I never really got in the way of their relationships with their dad. But I knew that my dad wasn't fighting for me. He wasn't looking for me. And I suffered for that for many years. It wasn't until years later of becoming a way-grown woman that I really healed from that and became immune to, and not really immune because you can still be hurt from it, but it couldn't dig down in my soul anymore. And I remember some occasions where I could see that I was healed, because, when you suffered from rejection a lot on the outside, you're quick to reject other people, and you have a strong persona, and you say, oh, well, losing people ain't nothing to me. I drop people off. I don't care. I cut a person off quick, because you know what? That's the defense mechanism for being rejected. And true enough, we can have strong enough personalities, and we can have strong enough self-esteems that we know when to cut people off. But no one wants to go through their whole life cutting off everybody so that they don't have to experience rejection, right? So this is the kind of stuff that I love about Iyanla, because she helps us get to the root of this. When you see those families that she's talking to and they're trying to dig in deep, they run out the door, they get angry, because those are the woes and the fruits, so to speak, of rejection. So some years back, I was in a relationship with someone that was dear to me, and we were in a long-term relationship. I really loved this person, and I believe they loved me, but we would get into arguments a lot. And when we would get into arguments, we, of course, people have disagreements and they're not talking to each other. So we would not be talking to each other. And a couple of days would go by, and I would always call him first, because I didn't want to feel the experience of this person is not going to call me if I wait too long. I had already experienced so much rejection and abandonment from the relationship with my dad that I didn't want to feel that. I didn't want to go through that. So I would tell myself, well, I'm going to be the bigger person. I'm more mature. I'm going to reach out. But I got to a point, as I started to dig deeper into myself, I started getting more into the word. I started having a greater prayer life, and I was just growing and developing. And I was really learning to love myself, because loving yourself doesn't come from a birth, right? It just doesn't. You could have the most loving parents in the world. You could come from the most loving household and environment, and then you get older and you get into high school or middle school, and your friends start rejecting you, starts making you look at yourself differently, start making you think twice. You could go and get married to a man and his friends reject you, or you be in a relationship and his family rejects you, and it could make you feel disconnected in the pains of rejection. And your job and your workplace, you could feel rejected. In social groups, there's all kinds of ways, because there is social rejection, which is basically being snubbed or excluded from a social group. And there's emotional rejection, where someone is unavailable to you emotionally and rejects you emotionally, right? So I was getting stronger and I was growing. And one time we got into this argument. We had a disagreement. And I decided, I'm not going to be the bigger person this time. This is just not what it's about anymore. I have to try this on for size and see how it fits. I need to see how I can really deal with this, and if he is going to reach out. I began to see my value. I said, I'm worth this. I'm valuable. And he was valuable too. But I knew his value and appreciated and respected. He just didn't know mine. So I decided this one time I'm going to do something I never did before. I'm not going to call. I'm not going to reach out to him. I'm not going to send a text. I'm not going to send an email, a phone call, nothing. And guess what? I went through the first couple of days of looking at my phone every second and hoping and wishing that he would call, but I still didn't call. And I went through that. And then before I knew it, a couple of weeks had passed, and I really experienced hurt from that. I was really hurt, but I was convinced that I was worth the phone call. And I was in a better place where I was like, if this don't happen, it shouldn't happen. And I'm strong enough now to see that I'm just as good by myself, if not better, alone than I am with someone who doesn't value me. And we have to get to that place, because as women in our society, we've learned that our value is what our man do for us and what our man is to us, and that we have a man. No, it's lovely to be in a relationship. I love my husband. I love being married, and I love having a life partner and a friend and a confidant. But I know how to be alone too. I know how to be by myself. And that's why I think I was finally able to get married, because I had to date myself first. I took myself out on dates all the time. I treated myself. I would do my hair and go get my hair done and take a bath and get good and smelling good just to look at me in the mirror. I was learning to love me, and I was learning to love my life alone. And it got scary for a little while because I was loving it too much. And I was like, gee, I don't know if I'm going to be letting somebody in, because I love this life that I'm living too much. But God is meant for us to share. And I did meet a man that's not perfect, but I believe he's perfect for me. So then I'm here now married. But anyways, I didn't ever call him, and he didn't ever call me, and the relationship resolved. And I went from that hurting phase and not feeling like, who is going to love me from here? What am I going to do? I'm going to start over again. I'm going to be in a new relationship. And guess what? I just felt like, I just can't let this go. Maybe I should. And by the third week, I was still having second thoughts of maybe I should just call him. The fourth week. But then after a while, and I kept saying, I can't let this go. We got 2 years in together. And, you shouldn't use time as a reason why you stay with something or someone in a situation that's unhealthy. Time is not the factor. Quality is, right? And even if you have an ups and downs, as long as you can see that the quality is 90% good, even when you have the bad, then that should keep you. So we got to 4 or 5 weeks, and before I knew it, I was okay, because I had told myself, if he don't miss my absence, my presence, he don't miss my absence. If he can't miss me being there, he can't miss me being gone. And I'm gonna have to be okay. And I moved on. And sometime later, even maybe over a year later, we saw each other and we spoke and we became good friends, but never in a relationship again. And he said this to me. He said, you were the best thing that ever happened to me and the worst mistake I ever made. I said, worst mistake? He said, yeah, losing you was the worst thing I could have done. Meeting you was the best thing that happened to my life. Besides being a dad, meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me, but losing you was the worst mistake I ever had. And so I said to him, why didn't you just call me? And you know what his response was? I was scared you were going to reject me. I didn't want to get hurt. I didn't want you to hurt me. And I had that same thought. And here, there are so many marriages that are probably buried now. So many relationships, even with friends, that you love your homegirl, y'all close, and y'all had a spat, and you don't want to call her, or you don't want to call her because you don't want her to act like you kissing her butt, or you going to chase after her. And relationships that are dead, marriages that are dead because we're afraid of we have the fears of rejection, the feelings that come along with rejection. So I wanted to read 2 scriptures here. The first one I'm going to read is Psalms 118. And I'm going to read Psalms 118, verse 22. And it's just a short verse, but it means so much. It says, the stone rejected by the builders has now become the cornerstone. So anybody knowing anything about building, cornerstone is the one that holds the building up. Okay, again, that was Psalms 118:22. I want to read here from Romans. I'm in Romans 8, verse 15. It says, so you should not be like cowering, fearful slaves. You should behave instead like God's very own children, adopted into his family, calling him Father, dear Father. For his Holy Spirit speaks to us deep in our hearts and tells us that we are God's children. So you find your identity and you learn to live with the feelings of rejection through knowing who you belong to. Once I became grounded in Christ, I could deal with the feelings of rejection. When you are feeling rejected, there's some things you can do to help yourself. One is meet new people, engage in activities that bring joy, talk to those with whom you have deep connections, and learn something new. Take care of yourself. Do what you have to do for yourself, because the pains of rejection can be detrimental and they can be lifelong. They can cause depression and isolation and all kinds of other stuff that won't lead us down the path of our destiny. Okay? So this is my 15 minutes of faith. I hope you've been blessed by this. I want you to know that you would never be rejected by me, because I have nothing but love for you. Until I see you again tomorrow, if it's the Lord's will, I'll talk to you then.